Hi, my lovely Year 12s. Welcome to session number 5 for social influence. We're still on the area of conformity, but this time we're going to be looking at the social roles. And the key piece of research that we're going to be looking at is carried out by Zimbardo. So this is a key name. It asks specifically within the specification. So we're really important as well. Make sure you set up a key study sheet for this one. So far, we have looked at how a person or people conform to the behaviours or opinions of other people when they make up the part of the majority of the group. So we've already looked at the idea of majority influence. Lovely, just got a message. Let's turn my phone down. I feel like I should be at school here. Turn your phone down. Right, oh, it's even a message from South Hunsley. Lovely. Let's carry on with this. We're now going to focus on the expectations that people have of us and the extent to which we conform to these. So this one we're looking at is quite different. It's these expectations, but it's the expectations that arise from the social roles that we play. And these social roles are going to be very powerful on influencing our behavior. So we're not looking to see how others behave. We've already looked at that. We're looking on the assignment. No, it's not assignment, it's not the right word, right? It is being placed into a social role and you're expected to behave in a certain way. So let's understand what we mean by social roles. Social roles are the parts people play as members of a social group. Within each social role, you adapt your behavior to fit the expectation both you and others have of that role. So we all have different roles that we play. And that different roles, because we know what it is, we have a set amount or types of behavior that we would expect to see with that. So what social roles do we play? I can only use myself. So there are Mrs. Smith. These are just a few of them. I'm a woman, I'm a mum, I'm a wife, a daughter, a sister, a niece, an aunt, a friend, a teacher. I can go on and on. We all play multiple roles. So think about yourself, the different social roles that you play. You know, brother, sister, sports person, DJ, I don't know, you know, you might hit the decks in your room. Yeah, it doesn't sound cool coming from me, does it? But for example, we've got the social role of a mother. I'm a mum, so the expectation should include certain types of behavior. For example, mothers are caring, mothers are nurturing, mothers are loving, mothers are comforting. And it's these expectations we are expected to conform to. So a nice little task for you. What I'd like you to do on a piece of paper, list down as many social roles that you think you play. Then I'd like you to take 2 of these social roles and write down the behavioral expectations of these roles. Remember, pause the video. Just stop so you've got time to do this. This will make you understand that with every social role that we have, there would be some form of expected behaviors, plural, not just one behavior, behaviors. So stop the video and give it a go. Now that you've done that and had a little bit more understanding, we're going to be looking at our key research, the Stanford Prison experiment. Some of you may have already heard about it or seen there. I think there's 2 movies out on it. It's called The Experiment. I think it is on Netflix, but I will find a link for you to see if you can watch some of it on the interesting watching video sheet. Now, Zimbardo conducted an extremely controversial study on conformity to social roles called the Stanford Prison experiment. When we go through it, you'll understand why it was quite controversial. Remember, you need to create a key study sheet for there. So there you get to see old Zimbardo. Hi, Zimbardo. There you go. Give him a wee wave. So, what was the aim of his study? To examine whether people would conform to the social roles of a prison guard or a prisoner when placed in a mock prison. So quite a basic aim, to see whether the participants, they put them either into the role of a prisoner or into a guard, and would they conform to those behaviours. But he also wanted to examine whether the behaviour displayed in prison was due to dispositional factors. You know what dispositional means, we've looked at that before. Dispositional means personal factors to the person themselves, or external factors, situational factors, the environment they're in, or, for example, the conditions of the prison. So he wanted to see whether they would conform to the social norms, but he also wanted to see whether this conformity to the social norms was due to dispositional or situational factors. Now, the sample was made up of 21 university students. They volunteered in response to a newspaper advert. The participants were selected on the basis of their physical and mental stability. And what this means is a lot of people actually volunteered, a lot of young men volunteered for this study, but they weren't just taken on. They went through a whole selection of psychological and physical tests to make sure that they were psychologically and physically well enough to be able to carry out the experiment. They were paid $15 a day to take part. It was quite a bit of money in the 70s. And the participants were randomly assigned to one of the two social roles, either prisoners or guard. Remember, random assignment. Their names could have been selected out of a hat, because they did random assignment because they didn't want perhaps personality factors or any other factors to influence their allocation. Procedure. What Zimbardo tried to do was make the research, the experiment, as realistic as possible. So there are certain things that he did. He created at the university, Stanford University, that's what's called Stanford Prison experiment. In the basement, they actually turned it into a prison. Put bars on the doors. They got rid of all the office furniture. They used the offices that were in the basement as cells. So they really converted it. The ones that were allocated to be prisoners, they didn't know who they were allocated. They weren't told. But the ones that were allocated as prisoners were actually arrested by real police. If they were living at home or university digs, they would have been arrested there. They would have been taken to a proper police station. They were stripped down. They were given a smock to wear. They were had shackles, so chains put on their ankles. Their names were replaced by numbers. It was made as real as possible. Now, none of these young men had been arrested before, so they didn't know that they wouldn't have been put into smocks. They thought this was the real thing. The guards, they were brought in, able help to set up the prison, and they were given their khaki uniforms to wear, but they were also given things like, those mirror sunglasses. They were given wooden handcuffs, a truncheon. So they were kitted out to look like real prison guards. And they were instructed to run the prison without using physical violence. The prisoners had 16 daily rules to follow, which were enforced by the guards. Also, within this, Zimbardo played the role of the prison warden, like the one in charge of it. The experiment itself was designed to run for 2 full weeks. That was 14 days. So what did they find? And this is where it came out to be rather controversial, and you'll see that in the findings. Zimbardo found that both the prisoners and the guards quickly identified with their social roles. It didn't take them long. Guards were acting like guards and the prisoners were acting like prisoners. So they fell quite into the roles and probably the expectations they thought of those roles. Within 2 days, the prisoners started to rebel by swearing and refusing to do what they were told. But the guards quickly crushed this rebellion. right? And actually, they grew rather abusive towards the prisoners. And the guards started to dehumanize the prisoners by getting them to do things that were actually not very pleasant. You know, waking them up in the middle of the night, forcing them to clean toilets with their bare hands, you know, controlling them using a fire extinguisher and spraying it over them. And they got rid of their names, the number, and they had to repeat their numbers over and over again. So really, these were just some of the things that they found that the guards did. They really started to be quite abusive of their roles. 5 of the prisoners were released from the experiment early because of the adverse reactions to the physical and mental torment that they received. For example, crying, extreme anxiety. Within, I think, 2 days, once the prisoners started real, the first prisoner was released from it. Although the experiment was set to run for 2 weeks, it was terminated after 6 days when a postgraduate student convinced Zimbardo that the conditions in his experiment were inhumane. Zimbardo didn't notice that the behavior of the guards and the reactions of the prisoners were going beyond what you would actually have seen in the experiment. And one of the reasons was Zimbardo was playing a role as well, the social role of the prison warden. So when he was talking to prisoners, he was talking to them as a warden, not as a senior researcher. He was talking to them as the prison warden. He was talking to the prisoners. So he was in the whole role play. So here we can clearly see that everybody involved actually were adhering to the social expectations of those roles. So what conclusion did Zimbardo make? He concluded that people quickly conform to the social roles even when the role goes against moral principles. When these young men were tested, especially the guards ones, they had never committed acts out of anger. They didn't like the idea of humiliating people, and they had a clear understanding what is morally right and wrong. But actually, he found that these guards were adhering to these social roles. He also concluded that situational factors were largely responsible for the behaviour found, as none of the participants had ever demonstrated these behaviours previously. So he found it's not dispositional, it's the situation that we're in, the social roles that we play within these. So no matter what no matter what role played by each person conformed to the behaviours, be it a prison guard, be it the prison warden. They even had a prison chaplain there. They all believed that they were in a prison rather than a role play scenario. So when we look back at Zimbardo's, it's very controversial of the psychological and physical harm it caused its participants. But it does show us that when we are in a social role, we adhere to those expectations. But really, think about it. Those young men, none of them had ever been prisoners before. None of them had ever been prison guards before. So where did they get these expectations of these social roles? And maybe the behaviors that they were expressing were not actual proper behaviors that we would see a prisoner or a prison guard have. Because these young people would have probably have got this information on these social roles from things like movies. And we know movies, they're always an exaggeration. So we can think along that line as well with regards to an evaluation. Your next video that you're going to get on this for session 6 is going to be the evaluation of this study. So remember, take the time, make your notes, work through the video, key study sheets, really important. And on that happy note, my lovelies, I will speak to you soon.